we as Polish people, like a Polish nation, we are a target of Russian disinformation. We are in the front line. That is why today we host our distinguished guests from Estonia, from Lithuania, and from Latvia, because we face the same challenges coming from Russia. As Minister said, in Poland, we've got a great community of institutions that are dealing with disinformation, that are countering disinformation. These are non-governmental institutions, governmental institutions. And the problem of the disinformation is big enough to be perceived by the very high level of the governmental institutions. And we've got the plenipotentiary of the government for security of the infosphere. We've got operational center to the Ministry of National Defense. We've got War Studies University and the Academic Center for Stratcom. We put all our efforts and we put together all our efforts to have this safe information environment and to face info terror that comes from Russian side. Today we've got Vladimir Sazonov from Estonia. We've got Tomas Tauginas from Lithuania, and we've got Tomas Pildegovics from Latvia. I strongly believe that I pronounced surname nicely. Yes, and their attendance at War Studies University, the fact that they are guests of the Academic Center for Strategicznej, is a very tangible proof that we perceive the danger, that we perceive the threat very strongly on the common background. Nevertheless, before we start our discussion, I would like to invite you for the short spot that is announcing what is Academic Center for Stratcom, what we are doing, what we are dealing with. So please run the spot. Thank you.
W chaosie informacji wygrywa skuteczna strategia. Akademickie Centrum Komunikacji Strategicznej jest niezależnym think tankiem Akademii Sztuki Wojennej.
Naszą misją jest usprawnienie komunikacji w Wojsku Polskim i zwiększenie odporności społecznej na dezinformację.
Łączymy środowiska wojskowe i cywilne.
Analizujemy infosferę.
Wyciągamy wnioski i reagujemy na wydarzenia.
Organizujemy spotkania, debaty i konferencje. Wzmacniamy współpracę międzynarodową w obszarze Stratcom.
Prowadzimy pierwszy w Polsce certyfikowany przez NATO kurs dla osób zajmujących się komunikacją strategiczną w wojsku.
Szkolimy żołnierzy wszystkich rodzajów Sił Zbrojnych. Pilotujemy pierwsze w Polsce podyplomowe studia MPA, Master of Public Administration, czyli komunikacja strategiczna w administracji publicznej.
Na różnych poziomach uczymy administrację publiczną, studentów uczelni wojskowych i uczniów klas mundurowych, jak walczyć z dezinformacją.
Realizujemy kampanie społeczne i informacyjne.
Nasze raporty i biuletyny publikujemy w internecie.
Dobrze wiemy, że sztuka komunikacji jest językiem przywództwa.
Yeah, thank you very much. The art of communication is the language of leadership. Gentlemen, if you wish, just few words about you. Mics are on. Yeah, starting from Vladimir. Yeah, it's already on.
Hello to everyone. So it seems it works. It's an honor to be here. I'm Vladimir Sazonov. I am a leading researcher in Estonian Military Academy and University of Tartu as well, and I'm currently leading a research team which is studying Russian disinformation, so strategic narratives and also fake news.
Thank you very much. Tomas?
Hello everyone, I'm Major Tomas Tauginas from Lithuanian Armed Forces Strategic Communication Department, actually who is responsible for the information environment assessment in order to increase information defense of our nation. So generally dealing with the adversaries' information operations and definitely propaganda as the one of the substantial parts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tomas?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a true honor. My name is Tomas Pildegovics. I am a senior expert at the NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence based in Riga, Latvia. And before, I used to work for the European Parliament's Special Committee on Foreign Interference in Democratic Processes. So that is kind of my specialty, hybrid threats, foreign interference. And maybe to briefly say a few words about the organization I represent now, the NATO Stratcom COE. It's a NATO-accredited international military organization, but I want to stress that we're not a part of the NATO command structure. So our COE does not speak on behalf of NATO, and neither do I today. So what do? We contribute to the Alliance's Stratcom capabilities, both within the Alliance and among individual allied nations. We do both public research and kind of investigations on behalf of allied member states. We develop doctrines and concepts in the field of Stratcom, and we are increasingly involved in supporting war games and military exercises. There is now a growing awareness within the Alliance that Stratcom is actually a very core component of any crisis management scenario. And we do this by providing a kind of synthetic, you could say AI-driven information environment that allows participants to simulate what the conditions of the information environment would be during a conflict scenario. So thank you. I really look forward to the discussion.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So as I've mentioned at the very beginning, we gathered here to talk about a host of narratives, about propaganda, about manipulation, about disinformation as a process. So the truth of the matter is to look at the different angles that Russian disinformation strikes our countries and our nations. And you, as representatives of Baltic states, you've got your own history and your own experiences. And that's the question. How does Russian disinformation look like in your country, and how does it strike your nations? And we'll start from Vladimir. I know that Vladimir prepared a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. So please start the presentation.
Yes, thank you. I have a presentation, but shortly, but because before the presentation starts, this is a project. My research is based also partially on the project which I am leading, and in this project are involved several scholars from Estonia, actually good colleagues from University of Tartu, Dr. Andreas Vensel, Dr. Mari-Liis Madison, Dr. Sten Hanson, and the colleagues from ICDS in Tallinn, Dr. Ivo Jurve and Dr. Holger Möller from TalTech, and Dr. Igor Kopytin from Estonian Military Academy as Lieutenant Reserve Janus Sagi, and many cadets, master students from Military Academy, also master and PhD students from universities as well. So I don't have a lot of time for my speech. I try to okay, I can see here. So how it works? Very briefly about my presentation. It's many slides, and so I will do some cherry picking and from this. If you have a more interest, you can read presentation, and of course we have published several books, articles, volumes, and reports, and most of them are also in English available. If you have interest, I think my colleague will share. So actually, of course, the Russian disinformation, information warfare is huge. They are targeting globally all world, or especially Western world. They are targeting Ukraine. They are trying to harm Baltic states, Poland. They try to destroy our system, our security environment. And of course, COVID-19, for example, was one example how Russia and China, but also Iran and other countries tried to use this as opportunity. So I will speak about some examples about Russian information warfare. I will not go to detail. So, of course, I speak about strategic narrative. I try to explain what is a strategic narrative to whom who don't know. Basically, strategic narratives which are disseminated by Russia describe European Union, West, our society, United States, with its democratical institution values as something corrupt, something which is need to reform, and Moscow try to show that they are only one who are protecting family values and fighting against this kind of declining West, gay Europa, how they called in the propaganda narratives, and so on. Of course, they propose some kind of other platforms, alternative as the BRICS, and some others. But mostly the propaganda of Russia is also oriented on their own domestic audience. For the Putin's dictator's regime will be, for his purposes that this dictator regime will be survived. But of course, they try to harm us. So strategic narratives, I will not explain here, you can read it. There are many books about this system. What is strategic narratives? It is basically, as according to Ney and Miss Kim and others, this is a new soft power. Not only in Russia, there are many countries who are promoting strategic narratives, and you can use strategic narratives even in a positive way. You can try to promote your country in something positive way. But Russia is used destructive strategic narratives. Mostly they try to affect three dimensions. We speak about strategical levels, as I understand. So, of course, one of the very important is politics. They try to influence the politics. They try to influence international system, also as well economy, also global economy. Of course, Russia is a quite not powerful country in economical sense. They're in declining. They have no good technologies, but only good what they have. This is propaganda, and they try to harm. And of course, identity. Identity is how the political actor, for example, want to project their identity in international relations. For example, promoting already very old narrative of propaganda of Russophobia. Actually, it's already used in 19th century after Crimean War. If you know the Russian poet Tyutchev, he wrote in his letter of his daughter. Tyutchev was a Russian chauvinist and Russian imperialist to his daughter that about those Russophobes. It was, I think, in the year 1967, something like that, 150 years ago, basically. It's nothing new. And the claiming West and that the West want to destroy Russia is also come from the same period after Crimean War, which Russia was lost in the middle of the 19th century. And of course, Russia started its again Ottoman Empire. So, if we speak about more detail, it's of course they try with these strategic narratives to influence several groups, Euro-scepticists, anti-US groups, both left, right, far right, far left, even liberal. All are potential targets of the Russians. And not only the Russophone people and only the people who speak Russian, but also they will try to harm them also. And of course, I skip this slide because I will go to some examples. My colleagues also can also provide from their own experience. And for example, we analyzed COVID-19, and in COVID-19, of course, there were many narratives about how the Baltic states, among them Estonia, is starving. We cannot, Estonian economy cannot survive. European Union not help. Nobody will help. Economy will failing. People losing their jobs. And we all will be bad. And only one solution, of course, a friendship with Russia. And for example, this article published by Russian propagandist Crystal, who published in this special RU Baltic RU, which luckily now in Estonia banned, but it since 2022, of course. And one article example, it's how Baltic states survived. And of course, he wrote about these so-called statistics to show that its article is credible. Of course, the statistic is not true. And of course, they used this false news or misinformation with some facts, of course. And he arguing that there are two types of the countries. During the COVID-19. The first in countries which have a necessary financial airbag to minimize the losses, like Germany or France in European Union. And the second group is countries very, very poor, failed states almost. They have problems also among the Baltic states. This is what they promoted. This was a fool. Also for we in Estonia got this, especially this is of course for the Russophone people who live in the Baltic states, especially in Estonia, but not only. This was promoted also via social media, also in some Russian-speaking Estonian channels, and this kind of narratives. So the second narrative is on the system of international relations. For example, here an article of Vadim Ava, another Russian propagandist who wrote for this Kaliningrad established pro-Russian RU Baltic RU. For example, we speak about identity narratives. There are many of them, but one of the most famous is also Russophobia, strongly promoted by Kremlin. And all people, according to Putin regime, all people are Russophobes who will not promote the Putin. If you don't like Putin, you are Russophobe. So there's nothing question related to hatred against Russian, and of also blaming in Nazism and fascism, Baltic states and other people. And for example, about this example, which I will mention, this brain coronavirus, Estonia's Russophobes were insulted by Moscow help. This was a propaganda article about that how Estonia is in problem, how Russia is sending humanitarian aid to Estonia. Of course, there are no humanitarian aid. They will all, I think it was masks which Estonia buy, if I'm not wrong, from China, and they rent Russian airplane. But Russia say that they send. They lied, of course, like always, these things were published, especially Sputnik. But Sputnik was 2019. The transmission was stopped in Estonian, but they still put in some Radio Sputnik and some other channels. So the narrative of Russophobia in Estonia, it's well known. It's nothing new for you. They used only our expression specific. They wrote negatively about our government, about our society, about our people. There are Russophobe. The Russian people are oppressed. Russian people are discriminated. What else? Estonia is compared with small hatred Nazi state, fascist failed state, abandoned by the host, totally dependent from NATO, United States. It's very poor one, and this kind of nothing new. In that case, how they work. So some examples about pro-Russian organizations. Some of them are now closed, but still we have this Russian school in Estonia. Русская школа в Эстонии, which are speaking about Russophobia. They are working with pro-Russian and also with Russian authorities, and probably with some Russian and secret services. I think so. And also in the OSCE, they try to promote ideas that Estonia is a small Nazi state which discriminates Russian people and so on. Of course, or we have the club Impressum. Basically, they got the money and support from Russia. This is examples how they work on this, let's say, on the tactical or so on level. So such an anti-Estonian narratives. Estonia is showing mocking Estonia, also humiliating Estonia, showing that Estonia is a small, stupid country which tried to provoke Russia. They wrote something about Russophrenia and this kind of things. But of course, it's nothing new. The same we can speak about Latvia, Lithuania, and some other countries. So Sputnik again, in this then fascism in Estonia, how Russia can, for example, basically that Estonia has shown a small fascist country. But of course, creation of fear, manipulated with numbers. We wrote an article with my colleagues in War and Media Conflict, and then also in Estonia Military Academy journal about how Zapad 2070 was used by Russia's information campaign to influence people also in Baltic states to create a mistrust and fears, because Russia is always playing with the numbers. So according to this Vienna document, we know they should have less than 13,000 people in this Zapad military exercise. And officially Russia say yes, there are so, but they also come from some channels, the numbers of 100,000, 200,000 people are involved. Actually, we don't know how many people were probably involved, but they try to scare. They scare that showing the videos that they have no analogy, the analog of net covering the videos that our forces are as strong. At the same time, if Estonia, Latvia, or some countries are speaking that Russia is aggressive, they say no, it's purely defensive things. Also in 2021 they do this, but it was quite new because it was Zapad 2020 was in context of this hybrid threat caused by Belarus and probably with Russia. We use these Middle Eastern migrants. Sorry. Okay, so I try to this is an example about the guy who was editor-in-chief until this years was editor-in-chief, Chaplygin. Stolica is an Estonian Russian-speaking journal which is related to our party, Central Party. In Central Party, there are some pro-Russian people. I don't speak now about general about this party. There are many people. There are many loyal to Estonian government. And he published a lot of this on gray zone and sometimes promote anti-Ukrainian narratives. For example, in 2014, here he also 2022 already wrote about that if Russia and Estonia get worse, Estonians will not get better. So promoting again ideas about the Estonia people are oppressed Russians in Estonia, there are Russophobia. Formerly also published articles which was not showing the Ukrainian positive way. So this guy is working in the line of Russian narratives. I can see why he is doing, is his views or not, but unfortunately we have this kind of persons in Estonia, still, even now. So what I can conclude, we speak about disseminated narratives, then we can speak that there was on 3 levels: political, also economical motives to disrupt the international system, motives indicate conflictual identities, so between Russian and Baltic nations, between Russians, particularly Estonian people. So negative images about Ukrainian war refugees, about Ukrainian state, and if you, I will show some few slides at the end. Can you see it? For example, this kind of propaganda will also transmitted for Estonian audience, especially Estonian Russophone audience, let's say through social media, Vkontakte, Facebook. Also, after then, Estonia banned these Russian propaganda TV channels and many sites. It's still you can see in Telegram. So this is about Surkov. I will not speak much about the Surkov, but probably I will show findings of my good colleague and former student, Dr. Ramon Loik, who, by the way, wrote a nice work in last year in Military Academy, which supervised by me, and he gave the permission to mention it about the narratives of Russian information operation, disinformation against Ukraine and West 6 months before the war. So, like denial of Ukraine's sovereignty, accusing US and United Kingdom in provoking the war against Russia, as well supporting terrorism in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, accusing NATO and West in aggression against Russia. Of course, Poland, Baltic states were also showing in aggressive Russophobia and incident against Russia, including conjunction with Ukraine, and so on. For example. So, but of course, I'll also skip this because of lack of the time, and mention that the topic of Russophobia and neo-Nazism was promoted by Russia always. And for example, there are propaganda channel Telegram Donbass, the site Donbass Решает, they put a lot of this kind of disinformation against Ukraine. You can see it. Sorry. Okay. For example, the Putin. I think also Putin also promoted this kind of propaganda that Russia is fighting with the neo-Nazis and so on. And now I will try to finish my presentation. I skip some. Maybe I can show a few slides, especially culture of fear promoted by Russia. Culture of fear, which is a part of the Russian propaganda, creating the fear that people start to be scared. It's like during the COVID will destroy, or culture of fear, the Bucha and other massacres is not only the genocide of against Ukrainian people, but it's also information warfare. It is terrorizing of Ukrainian people, terrorizing the world, trying to scaring. If they cannot be successful in the war, they try to scare. So,
Vladimir,
thank you.
Could we, put a kind of circle and put a kind of sum up of your presentation?
So I will try to sum up in that case, that we should be always aware about the Russian propaganda, and they always try to use our vulnerabilities. However, they are similar, and they try to always be very situative. So they have some situation or like an opportunity, and they try to use it. In that case, we should be aware. We try to respond. We should be not splitted. We should be working united against this aggressor, which have no moral boundaries, of course. And the awareness is very important. Also, also increasing of critical thinking, especially. Also, my country work on that, so I will skip the slides about Estonian response and countermeasures. I don't have a time, but I think it's very important here to work on resilience and on that issue, the truth, and we should be.
I found them very common also in Poland. I've enumerated a few. You've mentioned about the international relations that are attacked, about the politicians, about the identity. I would just mention one thing from the Polish perspective. We help Ukrainians much. We help them a lot. We are at the frontier, the first country that delivered help to Ukraine in such a vast scope. And that is also our help, our provided assistance is also the target of Russian disinformation. But for good sake, Polish government is resilient to all of the disinfo and fake news and false narratives that comes from Russia. So that's also the point I would like to mention at this time, that these are very similar things as in Estonia, and we can add, as a Polish nation, the Polish society, we can add some more because of the distinguished parts. So yeah, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there will be time for discussion. And now, Tomas, how you would like to point out, to describe, to characterize the disinformation coming from Russia into your country, into your nation?
Okay, thank you. So, talking about similarities, already were mentioned a lot of them, talking about Russophobia, Nazism, threatening Lithuanian society and the government because of the help to Ukraine, talking about our foreign policy, talking about the following of the democratic values, especially when we have situations next to our border, for example, in Belarus elections, and as the outcome, the illegal migration or unlawful migration, I would say, the new term. But I would like to start a little bit from the beginning. So from our perspective, during our assessment, we really need to understand the roots of and the cause of what's happening. And then we identify the owners of activities and their communication. We can understand what they are about, what we are looking for, what they are strategic goals in the future. And by this, by looking those initial communication points, we can understand towards what audience we are what audience we want to target, what messages they are pushing into the environment, physical and electronic as well, and simply saying what we're trying to achieve. If we could divide that the period in two parts, talking about the Lithuania case. It is before the fall in USSR and after the fall the USSR. And from the Lithuania perspective, before the fall of the USSR, the USSR communication was related to maintain, how to say, all the possible relations with their occupied nations that hold them inside. After the fall of USSR, their communication were concentrated not to allow us to become NATO members and European Union members. And afterwards, the communication until now is related and definitely targeted our membership. We simply want us disintegrate from those organizations and create conditions like in Sakartvelo or Ukraine. So this is like a general picture, and talking about really how to say Lithuania case. So we see the three directional communication. So one communication is to the Western audience in order to affect their will to defend us if something happens, if NATO Fifth Article need to be activated. They communicate to our internal audience, to the Lithuanian society, in order to reduce will to resist, talking specifically from the military perspective. And definitely they building the path for our exit from NATO and European Union, one and another way. And the third audience, definitely their domestic audience, Russian audience, very likely Belarusian as well, is to strengthen their will to obey the leadership law and order. Blindlessly follow their order to we see what's happening up to now. To review a couple years, or recent couple years, we have numbers. We have almost 5,000 events every year, which is really increased with the comparison with 2020 and 2019 and 2018. We have highly increased events, we call unique event when we speak about the activity which is related with opinion shaping, either it is in electronic environment or in a physical. And this is how this like kind of our approach and methodology, the analysis of intensiveness and density and their communication ways and activity directed towards Lithuania. Now, talking about the narratives, definitely we will already covered some of them. Talking about the, I would say, most of them related with the historical perspective, and definitely it's related with the foreign policy. This is related with the defense. It is related with the economy. It is related with the education. Despite the fact we are military and we do analyze information environment from the military or defense perspective strictly, everybody aware of PEMISA scope methodology. So if we want to understand, centers of gravity or centers of weakness, we need to look at 360 degrees, actually, in order to understand the cause or effects, actually. Talking about the effects, then Russia attacked Ukraine and threatened with the nuclear weapons. I was like a psychologist 2 weeks talking with my relatives, with my neighbors, with my colleagues, reminding them, but look, we are NATO. So you shouldn't scare actually of Russian propaganda, which was like we saw artificially implicated, on social media, on social networks. Definitely we have some activities, physical activities, or the people who support Russia's Federation activities of communication, and this is how the so-called information laundry it is being done. Actually, it's like the conversion information from Russia's Federation information space, Belarus information space, or China's into the our national. And simply saying what we see from our perspective, most of the let's say society who were used Russian channels before or in the past, we continue to use them despite the fact we have some preventive measures by suspending Russian TV channels in Lithuania because of the promotion of the war propaganda or something like that. People continue to watch these channels either through the satellite dishes, which are comparatively cheap. It is a very interesting phenomenon, or by watching them on the social media, actually. And when we look at, let's say, YouTube, you can find those Russian propaganda, like 60 minutes channels or programs and so on. So simply saying, and they are quite popular. So well, that is the how to say, let's say, opportunities for the Russian propaganda. But saying that now what happened in Ukraine, if the society were not aware of the things what happened in 2008 in Sakartvelo or in Chechnya before, if we were not aware of 2014 what happened in Ukraine, so now it's I believe our society and the Western world is awake, not awakening. Hopefully, is awake already, actually. And here we have kind of the situation. Then we might have evaluate more actions rather words. Simply saying, because the image is already really tear up in a Western society, at least talking about the Russian Federation. And many things are happening just because of the fear or the will not to get the situation to the 45-minute Third World War. So I would like to be more optimistic here. talking about the Lithuanian society, our society, we're quite aware of the things. We as a military, we really participate and perform in various activities actually related with the critical enhancing of the critical thinking through the awareness, through the inform the society from a cooperation with the media about the adversaries' activities, and simply saying participation in various other long-term projects, because strategic communication is about future, about what's going to happen many years in advance. So talking about the future, we as a military provide support, especially with the projects who are related with the Lithuania's history, with the books, with the monuments, actually, who does really are the symbols, actually, of our national state. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Tomas, for highlighting the vast majority of these threatening directions. I've enumerated a few that, just in 2 words, the psycho threat posed by Russians. So talking about the nuclear danger. From your military perspective, it is highly important to put it on the daylight that, they try to manipulate, they try to force the propaganda that our countries would be left alone without any help, without any NATO assistance. And for sure, and for good sake, we are aware that we will be supported by our friends, by our allies. However, Russians try to undermine this way of thinking and this way of searching for the security. And the second thought, also talking about the thing that Vladimir mentions, is media. So that is a very important part of building social resilience. Media is the channel of communication between the society, between institutions, between the government, has got a kind of first and a very important role to build the info security, to fight the info terror. That is why media, social platforms are the very important element of building the national resilience against disinformation. Thank you very much once again. And Tomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I guess I have the toughest job because my colleagues here were very informative, really elaborated on so much theory and examples that I wouldn't want to bore you by kind of repeating the same things, right? Even though, of course, the experiences and practices of our countries are similar, our kind of strategic context is similar, but that does not mean we should be lazy just because of these similarities, and we should still, it's important that we exchange our experiences and points of view. So the organization I represent, the NATO Stratcom Center of Excellence, is based in Latvia. And this is not an accident, right? Latvia has been kind of at the forefront of Russian foreign interference, the full toolkit: energy manipulation, targeting critical infrastructure, financing political parties, messing kind of with diaspora relations, supporting fake media organizations, different types of shady NGOs, cultural organizations, institutions that are posing as scientific research centers. So we have the full toolkit, and Latvia has been kind of systematically under pressure, under attack by Russian foreign interference, essentially from the moment we regained our independence, right? And that is kind of, I think, a bit the historical context we should begin with when understanding how Russia attempts to target our society today. So very, very kind of broadly conceived, Russian disinformation attempts to challenge every aspect of Latvia's statehood, attempting to frame it as a failed state, a state which is not viable, which cannot exist without the kind of warm embrace and support of Russia. So it challenges it on a historical basis, arguing that our path to independence was only possible through collaboration with Nazism, with fascism, and that our breaking away from the USSR was a geopolitical tragedy. It challenges it on an economic basis, saying that actually our 30 plus years of independence have been a failure. Look, hundreds of thousands of Latvians emigrating to kind of wash toilets in the UK and in Ireland, saying that the economic model of independent Latvia is not realistic, it's not sustainable, and that our government is more concerned with serving foreign interests, serving Brussels, serving Washington, rather than looking out for its own people. And of course, politically, Russia uses all international fora, all international organizations available to it to argue that politically the Latvian state is toxic. There is lots of ethnic tension, that the Latvian government relies on ethnic discrimination, persecution of minorities, and so forth. And even though we all know that Russia often relies on kind of creating empty noise, putting out all sorts of narratives in order to kind of oversaturate the opponent, to kind of confuse us, putting forward all sorts of even sometimes crazy conspiracies and so on. I think for the purposes of this discussion, I will kind of try to take it seriously and not kind of discuss Russian kind of crazy conspiracies, which are kind of laughable. I think I would like to focus on three narratives that are unfortunately actually successful in Latvia. I think we should kind of take the threat seriously. So first, we need to understand that over the past year, the socio-economic context has been very difficult, right? Economic challenges are real, and this creates kind of fertile ground for hostile narratives to take root in the information space, and Russia can very actively kind of seize on them to spread them through proxies, through influence networks, through different type of opinion leaders it has in society. The first one, which I'm sure you're also familiar with in Poland, is that Russia has actively worked to link inflation, the cost of living crisis, to sanctions imposed against Russia. And of course, the Baltic states are among the highest targeted in the EU as a result of inflation. We have inflation in the 20s. So the important point there is that people's suffering is real. People are really struggling, and that is what creates the fertile soil. So every step Latvia takes to turn away from cooperation with Russia, maybe it's sanctions, maybe it's expelling some of their diplomats, maybe it's halting cultural cooperation, isolating or criticizing Russia in international organizations. Russian narratives say, well, okay, you do that, kind of enjoy posturing, enjoy your political signaling, but this will all come at a cost. So remember the price of isolating Russia when you are trying to fill up your car gas tank and it costs you, 70 euros. Think about then if it's still worth it. Or when you receive your utility bills, your heating bills, and it's 3 times as high. Think about that. So I think that this kind of, the costs of turning away from pragmatic cooperation with Russia, we need to be kind of look reality in the eyes. There are legitimate reasons for why such narratives can take root in our societies. A second narrative that also gains traction is that there are smart countries, let's say Germany or Austria, that look out for their citizens, that manage to secure different types of opt-outs from sanctions, that manage to maybe not rush ahead with kind of military support, that manage to really look out for their own citizens. And then there are, stupid lapdogs, the Baltic states, where, we have difficult economic conditions. In Latvia last year, we had teachers going on strike. Pensioners complain about not being able to buy vital medicines. Yet we are the ones arguing for sanctions the loudest, even though it hurts us the most. We are the ones sending highest proportion of our military expenditure to Ukraine. We are sending all of this humanitarian aid. We're sending food, we're sending medicine, all sorts of material, even though we have, poverty at home. How can you justify this? Again, maybe our governments, they must be serving foreign elites. We have, Ukrainian flags in the streets. What about our own interests? What about our own needs? And again, you can understand the logic behind this. This is not some absurd conspiracy type fringe arguments. We as communicators, whether it's in the government or in the military, we need to take these people's concerns as very, very valid, very legitimate. The third main narrative, which also gains some traction, is the one kind of painting a picture of unnecessary militarization. That actually, when there is a kind of geopolitical confrontation, let's say between Russia and the West, it would be in the smart, according to this logic, small countries like the Baltic states should be silent, kind of lay low, and hope that the wind kind of blows over. You should not poke your head when large powers are in a state of tension, in a state of crisis. Instead, according to this narrative, we are actually provoking the bear. We are asking for more Allied presence. We are asking for more American troops. We're asking for more Polish, military assistance. We are purchasing weapons. We're building bases. We are actually kind of putting a target on our own back. And when we have kind of foreign high-level officials or leaders visiting, again, we are contributing to this climate of militarization. Whether this is prudent or not, putting into question the pragmatism of our political leadership. So now, having outlined some of these, I think, more successful narratives that we should really be concerned with, I would like to spend a few minutes describing what Latvia has done to try to counter hostile disinformation and build resilience, particularly in the post-Ukraine context. So faced with this barrage of hostile disinformation, Latvia, of course, we cannot match the budget, the size, or human resources of the Kremlin's disinformation propaganda apparatus, which, of course, numbers in the billions. So we have had to make really smart, tailored investments in resilience and capacity building. So, of course, we have tried to be active internationally in this regard. So, for example, we have established the NATO Stratcom COE in Latvia. We are contributing experts to the European External Action Service, Stratcom Force East. We have established the Baltic Center of Media Excellence, which coordinates work of different NGOs trying to support media literacy, critical thinking initiatives in education, curricula, and so on. And we have offered asylum to Russian journalists. This includes Meduza, Dost before the recent controversy, Radio Free Europe, BBC Russian Bureau, Deutsche Welle Russia, and we've also worked on these issues at the UN level, supporting resolutions on disinformation, on infodemia, and so on. But more interestingly, I think, for all of us here, is what Latvia has done at home. And again, I am not a government representative. I'm not here to pitch these policies or tell you that they're good or bad. I'm more presenting and looking forward to the kind of discussion that we'll have. So, of course, in Latvia, the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February really struck close to home. It really triggered a nerve. It immediately became the greatest threat to our security, to our independence, and it really kind of vindicated some of our deepest insecurities about that this would happen one day. So we were no longer seen as kind of Russophobic or paranoid or just living in our own historical trauma. Suddenly all of this became real. And even more so, it finally allowed, in terms of the kind of domestic political scene, to take place measures that previously would not have been possible without the war. So some of these steps, and many of them I think are rather controversial, that the government has taken. So first, it was already mentioned by my colleague from Lithuania. Latvia took the rather belated decision to finally shut down Russian state-promoted television channels. This, of course, was very effective in limiting the inflow of Kremlin disinformation, but at the same time, it immediately also cut off the primary source of information for many of our Russian speakers. We in Latvia have a large Russian-speaking minority, somewhere around 35%. So it is easy to tear something down or to break it or shut it off. Much more difficult to offer something quality in its place. And here is where we have really been kind of stuck in political mud. We have shut off these channels, but this has, of course, left thousands of people in kind of an informational vacuum. So where are they now getting this information? And the dark reality is that it is probably some sort of shady Telegram channels, closed groups on Facebook, this sort of thing. We have people, especially in the eastern region of Latvia, like roguely, illegally installing their own satellite dishes to still get access to this content. Because politically, there has not been a consensus that we are now going to create our own Russian language content. Because the Latvian language is seen as small and threatened. We're not, of course, a country the size of Poland, right? So the Latvian language is seen as endangered. So there is no political consensus on whether we should create our own Russian language media from the state. I think Estonia has been ahead of us on this. I believe Estonia has allocated a budget of around 2 million euros annually to its own state broadcaster to create quality content in the Russian language. So that is the next challenge. Shutting something off, easy. Offering something instead, much more difficult. The next major step that was taken is to accelerate the transition toward schooling only in the Latvian language. So before, this was also kind of a political hot potato. We had basically a separate schools for in Russian language and Latvian language. This was no longer seen as sustainable because we would kind of continue creating this reality of having two different societies in one country. Under the geopolitical conditions, under this threat to national security, this is no longer seen as viable. Again, however, while politically there now is this consensus, very pragmatic obstacles, we do not have enough teachers capable of teaching in the Latvian language. So this also remains to be seen how this will really be, what sort of resources will be needed to kind of actually implement this, to underpin this. And more broadly, I think now on a societal level, there is a movement to try to counter Russian influence operations, including this information, through a wider effort to decolonize from Russian heritage, from Soviet heritage. This is, of course, something Poland is turning points in this, was the decision to remove. And the interesting thing was that unlike in 2007 in Narva, when Estonians removed this so-called bronze soldier monument, and which led to lots of riots. So this monument in Riga was, I don't know, maybe 5 times bigger than that. But the interesting thing was that it was not met with any kind of violence or riots and so on. So this was quite surprising. And kind of at least our analysis suggests that because of the way the Russian army has conducted itself in Ukraine, because of the atrocities in Bucha and Irpin and so on, it has really squandered a lot of its historical prestige, a lot of its respect, even among the Russian-speaking community. So even those Russian speakers who would still, let's say, feel like a symbolic attachment to the 9th of May, to lost relatives and family members, even they understood that this is not a time when you want to publicly associate yourself with this. So even those who are loyal decided that this was not the moment. So really, the tide has kind of changed in this regard. This movement toward decolonization extends also to small things. Riga City Council just approved changing 23 street names. We had street names dedicated to different artists and writers who kind of had, let's say, positive attitudes towards some Russian imperial legacy and so on. So these types of changings are happening. There's also, not on a governmental policy level, but just among people in daily interactions, movement to kind of de-Russify Latvia. This includes really small things like putting pressure on companies to remove the Russian language site on their website, or to pressure restaurants to remove the Russian language menu. So this is this idea that we do not want to be in the Russian sphere of influence, and therefore we do not want the Russian language to still play such an important role in Latvian public life. Because before, in Riga, you could get along with just speaking Russian easily. You could go to the street, to the restaurant, the movie theater, doctor. You do not have to know Latvian before. So now there is a movement on a societal level to decolonize. Maybe two more things, two more policies. One is that Latvia, along with the other Baltic states, took the really timely decision to close the border and announce politically that we will not be accepting asylum applications from those Russians fleeing mobilization, that this was not enough of a reason. And this, of course, on the one hand was timely because it prevented the kind of security crisis that we now see in Georgia or in Kazakhstan, where a really uncontrolled large number of young Russian men essentially fled mobilization, so we do not have this. On the other hand, we need to understand that this problem of people, of uncontrolled mass migration from Russia, I think it's only likely to grow as the economic and political situation within Russia continues to deteriorate. And here I must say that unlike Poland, which has done a really impressive, admirable job of securing your external border with all of these fences and walls and surveillance technology and so on, we are really behind on this. This is another political, let's say, nightmare that the coalition party is attempting to resolve. And yeah, the final step which was taken is that Latvia was the only country in the region until recently to not have conscription. And now there is really a wake-up call that we cannot just, be the boy who cried wolf. We cannot just call for NATO and say, oh, Article 5 and our Polish friends and the Americans will come to our rescue. We need to understand that, of course, we already were meeting the 2% spending target, but we really are now expanding our land forces. Now, wrapping up the steps that have been taken, I think before I conclude, I wanted to also provide a bit of kind of data on where the Latvian society stands today. So this can give us a glimpse into understanding how effective have these countermeasures actually been. So starting with the good, broadly, this much invoked war fatigue has not actually overwhelmed Latvian society. So now still 82% of Latvian society supports Ukraine's fight for its freedom and independence. This is actually this is a 6% increase from March when the aggression happened. 63% of Latvian society support Ukraine's NATO accession, and this is a 12% increase from when the war started. And 62% support EU accession, so this is a 7% increase. The more troubling is that the majority, so 60% of Latvian society, think that Russia's war in Ukraine has actually worsened relations between Latvians and Russians in Latvia. So this risk of polarization is real, and this is also a task that communication alone cannot solve. Kind of communication cannot rescue terrible policy. Communication alone cannot change decades of failed integration policy. But interestingly, overall, among the Russian-speaking population, support for Ukraine has actually increased. So in March, it was less than half. In March, only 40% of Russian speakers in Latvia supported Ukraine. Now it's 63%. And for accepting Ukrainian refugees, it has also increased from 40 to 64. So on a concluding note, war fatigue has not overwhelmed our society. Our society remains committed to Ukraine's cause. But I would really like to kind of caution us against falling into this trap of righteousness, of just taking it for granted. I think we need to make sure that we do not just assume that, oh, well, we have argued, we have shown that Putin is evil, and therefore we can just count on our society's support for any policy, any sanctions, as long as it's possible. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, people's suffering, people's struggle to meet these new economic conditions is very real, and it does create fertile ground for different types of foreign interference. So on that note, I would like to conclude by again thanking you for welcoming me here. And I'm confident that Poland and the Baltic states will work together. Our security is linked, our fate is linked. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your voice, Thomas, and for the very informative conclusion. I've noted, thank you for highlighting efforts done by the Polish government and about the fencing. Also in our country, there were some opposing forces that said that, no, it's not the way of securing Polish borders and so on. But now we can see that that was the real point, and that was a very important element of building our security, especially from the threats from illegal migration from the Belarusian side, of course directed from the Kremlin. And the second thought, thank you for mentioning some countries, naming them, Germany, Austria, and so on. We are not afraid to point these who, let's say, for the time being, do not understand that the collective thinking and collective defense is the most important. That is why we are here today, because we are a very living proof that we as countries, Baltic states, Poland, and many other of our friends, we do share the same idea that allied, that collective defense got the future, and we're the stronger together, and the strongest thoughts are the ones that we share. Thank you very much for this part of our conference. And now the floor is yours, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm pending for your question. Rector, Commandant General, please. Just one small remark. If you wish to ask question in English, it's perfect. If in Polish, I would translate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for all speeches. All were very interesting. And I have a question to all of you gentlemen. Thinking about the number of Russian minorities in your countries, I would like to get to know your personal view, your personal opinion. What kind of counter-disinformation activities are more, how to say, more effective in comparison with situation before the aggression and now? This is the question to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah. May you start, Vladimir?
Thank you for the question. If I correctly understand, you mean the counter activities done by Estonia? Yeah, of course, this is a good question because the measure, the activity and the effectiveness and impact is always most difficult. But of course, one thing which was done is just, the Estonian media showed quite objective and honest picture what is happened in Ukraine. And we were speaking with my Ukrainian colleagues in information warfare. They mentioned there were before the war, there were quite in eastern Ukraine, there were many pro-Russian people. There are still some of them still during the war. But in Estonia, we speak about the Russophone community. It's not homogeneous, it's heterogeneous. We have a Russian, we have a Belarusian, we have a Azeri, we have a Tatars, we have a Jewish people, we have and also Ukrainians, and now is coming in more Ukrainian and Russian by the origin from Ukraine. So and the people is on the different level of education, and some young people is more in social media or using also some Western, Estonian, and older people, especially in Narva or in some on Mardu, this is Russian-speaking cities, using more pro-Russian media discourse. But some people who I know also who were, let's say, before 2022, definitely pro-Russian. They changed their minds. Of course, the question is, some changed their mind. Probably they are afraid that there will probably something happen with their jobs. But definitely there are some people who show what is happening. I have one example. I know one guy who is very educated. He's in PhD, and because we have one common. So one colleague from university was his student. And 2014, when I spoke with this guy, he's a Russophone guy. By the way, he is from Latvia, and he was speaking about the bandera of in Ukraine and these things. I was shocked. I asked, why you speak these Russian propaganda narratives? In 2022, after 8 years, I was not speaking with him. After that, he called me, and he was pissed off that the Russian fascists killed his family members in Ukraine. And what he has done, I asked him why he changed his mind. He said, "No, I was always against the Putin." So the many people, if they have at least critical thinking, they understand that Russian bombs is not choosing. Are you against Putin? Are you pro-Putin? If these terrorists come, they are killing population. This is once. And Estonian media also communicate and show how this war and genocide was. The secondly, of course, it is important issue that in Estonia we are aware since 2027, at least 2007, what is the Russian activity. We have this in Tallinn, destroyers, Bronze Knight. And after 2014, Estonia has also taken several measures at state level to protect our country and society from manipulative and hostile information activity. 2015, I think it was opened Estonian Russian-speaking TV by the state, which slowly became more and more popular because the people now is looking on the Russian TV less. Of course, Russian TV channels, most of these TV propaganda channels were banned. I don't speak about this something, but have some films and cartoons. And secondly, of course, our government communication is very important, and also the speaking with pupils and students. For example, I was invited many times in the schools, Russian-speaking school in Estonia, to give a lecture about information warfare, and not only I. And also, what is very important, Estonia is also looking in our education on the literary medicine, media literacy, and also improving our curricula. So curricula not only in the military academy or universities, but also in some schools, even the Russian-speaking schools, they are more or less thinking about improving the critical thinking. This is important. There are several NGOs who are dealing with Russian propaganda, so countering like Propastop. There are people from Defense League. There are many volunteers. Also, there are many people who are promoting speaking about how the Ukrainian people are suffering. I know also many people, also Russian-speaking people in Estonia, who started to help the Ukrainian and donated the money and sending and going to Ukraine. So, however, of course, we still.
Can we sum it up in this way, that the educational perspective,
yes.
So building the critical thinking, it is a kind of point, a very strong point in switching the way, as you've said, and as the question was, between as the seizure of 2014, yeah. So before and after, yeah? So,
yes.
And maybe, Tomas, what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, adding to that, what we find out that we after that happened, the assault happened on Ukraine, we saw that our mass media, increased their translation in Russian language of our general articles. The problem is only there that our main media, they, how to say, transform from Russia's information field messages to Lithuanian. So, and it could work both ways actually. If the media takes what Putin said or Zakharov what she said and push it into our information environment, because this is all about where is our society, why like we trying to get rid of Soviet symbols or Soviet historical symbols, because psychologists, they explain that the symbols, they impact unconsciously your society. As like old Romans say that the symbols can support your rules of power. So simply saying we'll see where it will went. Definitely following the democratic society's values, we need to show both sides, as is being said. But the question, are there always, has a place, then war is going on. So another thing what we identified, our mass media really took step into that situation where, for example, sometimes for the government are kind of sensitive, or some of the organizations. So we start finding the researchers how our citizens are being related with the Russia's narratives, their networks and their activity, And well, in this case, shame and name, it definitely won't work for the Russia side, because like the ex-president Medvedev said that we don't care what you think about us. Hopefully it would work talking about our Western way of living. Definitely the cultural, sport, and business individuals related with the activities in Russia also definitely has the specific attention, and the discussions about it really doesn't impact actually, because the morality in this place really takes their own part. So that's what I would like to highlight actually, the mass media, the independent researchers really does an impact on society's opinion. Thank you.
So maybe Tomas, yeah?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really kind of timely, relevant question, because Russia's invasion in February of last year was actually a very traumatic event for many of our Russian-speaking community. I even had ethnic Russian friends myself, or kind of family relatives, who said that they didn't know what to do with themselves, because they were kind of ashamed of being Russian, even though they're of course not Russian, they're Latvian Russian. And I think that this psychological insecurity is really what we must engage as communicators. We need to, in Latvia, we need to communicate a completely clear, unambiguous signal that to the Russian-speaking community, that you are ours, you are a part of our society, you are valued contributors of our society. We do not see you as some threat or as Putin's agents, because Russia would only benefit from exploiting these fault lines, from splintering our society. So this movement towards integrating our society more closely runs along several lines. First is that, as I mentioned, this transition to an all-Latvian education system. Education is the key. Education is where this divide is really rooted. So this cannot take place any longer. Also importantly is that, for example, in the conscription in the armed forces, we now have an increased number of ethnic Russians from Latvia serving. That is important to really integrate them in all state institutions, including making them feel invested in protecting Latvia. And I think another point is that we need to really work much more on strengthening the resilience of our eastern region, Latgale. So especially following the annexation of Crimea in 2014, lots of Western journalists would write these really lazy opinion pieces that, is Daugavpils in eastern Latvia, which is a predominantly Russian city, is this the next Crimea? Is eastern Latvia the next Donbass? Or is Narva in Estonia? Is that the next Donbass? Is this where World War III will happen? And this is, of course, a nonsense. We have done all sorts of sociological research. There is no indication that the ethnic Russians in eastern Latvia want to be liberated by Putin, especially now that we see what liberation by Putin actually means. We now have the example of Ukraine. I don't think anybody wants that. But that nevertheless it doesn't mean that we can be complacent. It still means that we need to really invest in those people feeling not alienated, feeling that they're part of the economic life, political life, cultural life of Latvian society.
Thank you very much for, and we'll come back to you. But first, taking into consideration that you've got your flight and so on, and we are running out of time, so I would like to hear the voice of the youngest people here from schools, yeah, because these are the ones that we take care of. The world studies universities looking for to study here, to be the best educated people in Poland, to be future soldiers. These are the ones that Academic Center for Stratcom is striving for, to educate in case of being resilient to disinformation. So yeah, I'm waiting for your voice, I'm waiting for your questions.
So can I start?
Yeah, sure.
I'm Michał Mogilnicki. I'm student of National Security Faculty in War Studies University.
Perfect.
I have a question to all of you gentlemen, because listening to you was so really pleasure, but one thing is not clearly for me. Do your motherland's armed forces some carry out of scientifically research about strategy communication to protect, how to protect disinformation? What have I mean? Soldiers use some specialized books on or only some articles on another publication? That is my ask.
Okay, so you're asking about the educational system.
Yeah, educational system to soldiers, because I'm now work on book about strategical communication in military aspects. So this is so interesting for me.
Okay, so is there any kind of specific characteristic system of schooling, of educating soldiers to build anti-disinformation resilience? Yeah, Vladimir?
Yeah, if I may. Actually, in Estonia, we are aware about these things, and I'm working in military academy, and the Estonian army, so we have a Stratcom, which is also working on that, to countering Russian disinformation. They are monitoring the Russian disinformation, and they also try to educate, so our Defense League try to educate the voluntary people in Defense League about possible vulnerabilities and threats. And of course, on scientific level, my research group and some other researchers who also working not only about collecting data which Russian narratives are, but also there are some studies and some, of course, it's not open, most of them, some kind of manuals. For example, there are even some open things which you in Estonia, which is for publicity. For example, how to counter or how to recognize disinformation and how to protect And also very important is also cyber hygiene, also some kind of thinking how to protect from the cyber attacks, cyber perspective, and to protect your listen from, let's say, trolls on or viruses. But another things how to protect in information warfare, for example, social media. If you got some kind of this, like an Ukrainian soldier in 2014 got some kind of this fake news that Russian tanks are already in Chernihiv, which was totally false news, but it creates some kind of mistrust or fears, or the people in some Ukrainian cities in 2014 spread false news that the Russians is coming, Russians is there, but which is not true. We have this system, we have this kind of course, we teach cadets, master students, of course, as well. I know that in Baltic Defense College there are some given the lectures about information, disinformation. Even I was given last year as invited as a guest speaker. And of course, this is very important because even our scientific research, we have a practical value to learn from the Russian disinformation, and to learn in that ways how we can better protect, how we can be better prepared for next potential information campaign, or some kind of spread of this kind of fake news or fake conspiracies. What else? Disinformation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah,
So congratulations on writing the book. That's impressive. You should probably be sitting here instead of me. I think for me, a book is still a long time away. Of course, in the information, in the conditions of the information war, we are all subjects to it constantly. Not only in crisis or wartime conditions, at all moments, adversaries try to seize an advantage in the information space, try to gain any kind of informational advantage. And especially you as soldiers, as members of the armed forces, as members of military institutions and think tanks, you are of course especially desirable targets. And you would be surprised how much kind of open source information can be found online about every single one of you, especially the young people who have 4 different social media accounts. This does not require any kind of hacking or any kind of really advanced technology. It's 95% of intelligence collected these days is open source, so publicly available things that a guy sitting in St. Petersburg can search up. For instance, we did an interesting study at the NATO Stratcom COE, which actually, where we kind of, openly scraped some data available about soldiers, both foreign and Latvian, near a military base in Latvia. One of the main platforms used, of course, was Tinder, so you guys be careful. And surprisingly, actually, we gained enough information that we could influence soldiers' actions during a military exercise. So we could manipulate soldiers to leave their positions during a military exercise. Imagine that. So the security risks of that are immense. And of course, education, especially in the military sphere, must be a part of this. We have training provided both by the National Defense Academy and in the armed forces themselves, and support from the Baltic Defense College in Tartu, Estonia, and from different NATO allies, Poland included. Thank you.
Yeah.
Only one short note. We should always keep in mind that all we, young or old, all who are using social media or TV or newspaper, we are always in targeting target audience of information activity as, and very often harmful. So information warfare is always ongoing, and we are a part. If we don't understand that, you should always think who sent this information, who is the sender, which is the potential purpose, why I got these things, and who is the producer, who disseminated these things, and this should help, I think, hopefully.
Thank you for highlighting these steps of under these formative steps. Tomass, a few words from you, yeah?
Yeah, regarding Lithuania, so what actually has been done until now, so from the Stratcom perspective, military Stratcom perspective, so we conduct lectures for the focus groups about the hostile information operations, so it is for the military, for the media, for the governmental organizations, as well as for the academia and for the private sector, actually, for the stakeholders, actually, and who how to say, has quite strong, decision-making power, talking about the corporations and so on and so forth. It is worth to invest actually in those type of people actually who later on could give a huge payoff. Secondly, we as a military, we don't have a time for the creation of methodologies, cyber defense weapons, and something else. Actually, we're standing in virtual trenches in order to protect our information environment. So in order to solve the problem, we started a couple years ago, so-called NAS project. Actually, is our military academy and Mykolas Romer's Law University joint project. Actually, it's been funded by European Union Commission, and this is all about for the creation, the environment where the scientists and the national experts could work together in order to test the tools, the information technological tools, because the information technology they're changing constantly. Yesterday we had the Facebook, today we have Meta. Don't know what's going to happen with the Twitter, or there are many alternatives now appearing and the society moving from the left to the right. Secondly, methodology, what is the best way to analyze information environment, how to measure the effects, how to measure the political damage, economical damage, societal damage. Like we have Black Lives Matter situation in the United States. Just a minute of video product in the social media all over United States, and up to now there is calculation of more than $2 billion in physical damage, and I'm not talking about what damage was done in the society. The same with those conspiracy theories that happen in United Kingdom. 77 GSM towers were destroyed because someone believed that the government will gonna use G5 to control the brains, So simply saying, we just can imagine how information can turn into the actions and what the consequences can be. So because we don't have time to do it, we need tools, we need methodology, and we need orders as a military. To do what? So simply saying, this kind of capability was established until now, and hopefully we soon will have the environment where we'll be able to test the technology. We could experiment with the scientists, where we could build methodologies actually, and where we could have the, let's say, cyber polygon for the exercises. Because like when we fight on the ground, it's clear, but we need to somehow connect virtual environment, cyber, virtual, cognitive, and physical all together, in order to understand, all the situation actually, and especially when talking about the cyber environment, it doesn't have borders, it doesn't have time, it doesn't have phases, let's say, and that's why we need to have constant research on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomass. And taking the opportunity, and I would answer your question in a part. So Academic Center for Strategic Communication here at Warsaw University, we provide courses, workshops, and many other initiatives in Stratcom. And on every hour course, on every hour workshop, every hour seminar, we underline, we highlight what is the information, how should we distinguish it from the malinformation, misinformation, what are the threats, and what should we do to be resilient. We've got our basic course, we've got our advanced course, we've got our postgraduate studies that are launched, will be launched in March this year. We are doing Stratcom in military universities, academies, and we are coming to uniformed classes in high school. So, and I've got to underline that we, as the only institution in Poland, we've got strategic communication NATO course, so the course certified by NATO, and there we've got our national perspective and also NATO perspective. What is the Stratcom? What is disinformation, and how to fight it? So a lot of things are going on at War Studies University, done by Academic Center for Strategic Communication. Pending for the next question.
Okay, so I'm Martyna Szymańska from a military high school. And as a student from a young generation, I wanted to ask how we as teenagers can react to the disinformation in social media. How can we realize that it's about disinformation, and how can we act and treat that in our ways? Like, we are spending a lot of time on social media, and maybe it's easy to understand for you, gentlemen, but for teenagers, it might not be easy. So how can we understand that? How can we realize, and how can we react to things that are posted in social media?
Thank you for this question. Gentlemen, who will be first? Tomas?
An excellent question. I would actually say that as teenagers or young people, you actually have a special responsibility, because you are the generation that has grown up with all of these digital tools. Research suggests that your generation is actually more digitally literate. Young people are more skilled at understanding what is real, what is fake in the digital environment. And as we know in society, what is the primary source that people turn to information to? It's not public radio or television. It's actually friends and family still. And for this reason, young people have a special responsibility to educate their relatives, especially kind of pensioners, older generation, which tend to fall much more victim to different types of online scams or fraud or disinformation narratives. So actually, I would say the hope lies on you. Kind of the responsibility falls on your shoulders. And when it comes to what actions you should take, I think, of course, the main effort must be to really critically evaluate what content you share. Often we are all in this kind of era of attention economy, where we're now tired of watching, we're unable almost to watch long films or long videos. All we want is a TikTok or an Instagram story or some news headline. We've developed this really toxic behavioral pattern on a societal level, where we just read the headline or read something and we share it uncritically. Maybe not public, but even publicly on our profiles, but even just read like one sentence and send it to our friends and relatives and whoever. This is how disinformation spreads like a wildfire, not really critically evaluating the type of content that is shared. But I'm actually really encouraged, I think, by your generation. I guess mine. I still think of myself as a young person. So, yeah, the hope is with you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Tomas.
A little bit already older, middle-aged men, but I think two things are here important. The first, you should not underestimate the threats which you are surrounded also in information. Of course, it should be not paranoid, but still. And if you have some suspicions, you should check or recheck these things. Very often you can check. And secondly, improving on critical thinking and improving in skills in this how to protect, let's say, you in social media. It's also very, very important. There are also manuals. There are things you can Google. You can find it. Or there are some courses on that, which is actually not so difficult, of course, but it's better to spend some hours or days how to understand how to better. Of course, it's not 100%. You cannot 100% protect you, but still, it's give the more chances for you in protecting your family, your friends, or your system, or your account, or what else from this kind of threats. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. Tomas?
I have a comment not only for the young generation, actually. Talking about those awareness activities or precautions while using internet, it is really could became a paranoia wall danger, you know. Like you should always walk in a booby trap building or on the minefield, you know, while in a cyber environment. And that's I would think we should distinguish ourselves from those who were looking for the kind of information operations adversaries, and those who are looking for information for three main reasons and types of information. So I could call necessary information, useful information, and entertaining information. And this society could distinguish those three. So I guess we would never get themselves caught into the kind of misinformation, disinformation situation. Because necessary information, let's say information about the weather forecast or the schedule of a train. Okay, so we use that information from the trusted sources, and we are not looking on Facebook for the conspiracy theories where the train goes or not, right? We exactly know where to go and what to look. Second, useful information. So that information which could create added value for you. It's like stock market information or information when you want to buy, let's say, a new laptop or a new phone, right? You are looking like whether some websites shows like comparison of 10 mobile phones. Okay, so again, if you want to, you're looking from a very responsible individual perspective of the information, because you think that, okay, I'm gonna buy this tool or this phone, it's gonna be in my pocket, and if I will buy this phone from just, again, someone said on a social media, you know, conspiracy theories, you might be later on really disappointed. Third thing, entertaining information. So here there is, again, no critical information or no critical thinking here is necessary. If you're going to the Copperfield show, you're expecting to be tricked, right? So simply saying, if you can distinguish necessary, useful, and entertaining information or interesting information, and accordingly you choose the information sources, you will, how to say, your life will be much more brighter. This is what I think, actually. Talking about young generation, what I would say, and no, this is not my opinion, but the scientist's opinion, that the issue is popularity versus credibility. If it's popular, it is viral, it is, you know, everywhere, it is likely true, you know. So that's the psychological moment. So if something is going like, you know, wow, you should, you know, think double before liking or sharing, actually. So this is short insights on the information and sources.
Thank you very much, Tomas. And the answer from Academic Center for Stratcom would be hashtag FakeOdporni, hashtag FakeResilient. That is our social campaign, and we are giving a very separate and very detailed steps, as Vladimir you've mentioned, so check the source, check the author, and so on and so forth. So it is also our input into the answer to our question. And the last question, please. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Last question, so be briefly. Andrzej Pawlikowski, the director of the Strategic Studies Institute. Extending the question with students, so I would like ask you, gentlemen, thank you very much for the comprehensive and very interesting presentation. And the question is, what about the citizens or the ordinary people awareness? What about your countries? So you provide any solutions for your citizens, for your people, how to avoid threats concerned in the field of the information, disinformation from the Russian side. So how to avoid that threats? So you have an official system which provides that kind of the information for the ordinary people, for the citizens. Thank you very much. Was brief.
Thank you for this question. It is indeed a very important. So we are talking about the anti-disinformative tools. Yeah. Yeah. Vladimir.
Okay. We speak about common ordinary peoples. Of course, as you take the COVID period, for example, 2020, Estonian government and our official channels provided information in Estonian as well in Russian about what is going on, and then later about the vaccines, and try to people to explain what they should do. And of course, it works quite good, this strategic communication, because this on example, because there were so many conspiracies which was created by some simple people. All conspiracies come from even from Russia, so harmful. And the speak openly with people through the media and through the official sources is also is crucial. So and you should speak in that way that all people understand, not to be very sophisticated and not be in the doubt, and also telling the truth sometimes is very important in that case. That if for example, there is some crisis and you are like not speaking the truth, or you are something hiding, and if the information come later, the trust in society will decrease. Of course, it's very difficult to reach all the people because there's many peoples, but this is really very important.
Thank you very much, Tomas. Yeah.
So of course, governments must play a pivotal role. But I think just to kind of complement what has been said, I think governments alone cannot do this, and this is very important. And we need to understand that all of our countries already went through 2+ years of the pandemic, which really strained relations, which really diminished public trust in government, increased polarization, increased this kind of fatigue. So governments need to understand that sometimes they are not the only effective messengers if you really want to effectively reach audiences, reach wider publics. Governments should pragmatically engage a range of actors. One is, of course, the role of journalists. Quality, independent journalism is the essential kind of watchdog on countering disinformation, on fact-checking, and so forth. The second is, the NGO sector, civil society. Any government in our region should really empower this sector. Yes, and I think more and more, even large bureaucracies like NATO are understanding that young people, they are not so interested in hearing the press conference of the Prime Minister, or to hear some government expert coming up. They follow influencers. They listen to authorities for them from different spheres. and this must be also a core part of any kind of messaging, whether it's about the, I don't know, vaccines or about information war or any kind of issue. So governments alone cannot do this effectively, I think.
Thank you very much, Tomas. A word from you, Tomas, yeah?
Yeah, so Thomas from the left already
Yeah.
mentioned very important moment talking about the communication with the society through the entertainment, actually. And yes, influencers plays a huge role, actually, talking about informing the society the way they like to hear, because definitely no one wants to look at the boring person who is speaking with the in terms of yeah. So simply saying, but definitely it should be kind of complex approach. Now everybody is clever talking about the education of or literacy of media and internet even from the kindergarten, actually. So as early we start, as later on we would have more. I mean, as early we start, as less we challenge as we have. Simply saying, but definitely it is not a rule. Maybe after 10 years it should be or will be other technologies or other issues related with the communication, because now what according to the statistic, more and more even young generations are being involved into those alternative realities in a virtual environment. And what is happening that kind of communities creating from various nations, from various countries, creating the communities, virtual communities, who could turn into the maybe virtual countries, virtual histories, maybe new religions could, appear. And the issue here is in the far future, should we be concerned of our citizens who might be associate themselves ideologically with some kind of virtual country, not with the physical where we live? And that future challenge will be for sure. Thank you.
Thank you for your final thought. And as I've said, that was the last question during our today's meeting. Vladimir Sazonov, Tomas Tauginas, and Tomas Pildegovics. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for attending here. Thank you, our distinguished guests, for your attendance. And the last word from the Rector Commandant General, Robert Kosowski.
So if I may, on behalf of all participants on this event, I would like to thank you very much for being here, for your presentation, for speeches, which are very interesting, I'm sure. And I hope that Academic Center will have a possibility to continue that very interesting cooperation with you and your institution which you are representing. So I would like to thank you very much also to the Tomas and his friends for organizing this next event, because this next very interesting event organized by our Strategic Communication Center. And I'd like to give you, gentlemen, small gifts for the memory of this meeting, of this conference, and for the memories of this place, which is very, very important, especially for us and for the military education process in our country. So thank you very much.
Yeah, the family photo, yeah? Dziękuję Państwu bardzo. Na tym kończymy dzisiejsze spotkanie.
Thanks so much. This concludes today's meeting.